This is a quick tutorial to show how to take quite a noisy image, as you can see with this one shot at 6400 ISO, and clean it up whilst retaining detail in the subject matter. So just have a look at this. We'll bring the photo up to a 1:1, and you can see it is actually really quite noisy. So what we're going to do, we're going to start just by doing the usual tweaks to the image. So I'm going to go into the develop module, and so the first things I'm going to do is start looking at bringing down the highlights to recover detail back into here, because you can see it's sort of blown out. We've also got blown out highlights here as well, which are quite distracting. So I'm going to bring the highlights down, and straight away we can start to see a little bit of detail. And I'm actually probably just going to tweak the exposure overall just a smidge down as well, so we're getting a little bit of detail. And we'll have a look in the shadows. So if you hold the Alt key on the PC, I think it is, the Option key on the Mac, we get the mask there, so we can see when we start to lose detail. There we go, that'll do. And we'll do the same on the whites just until we blow them out. And again on the blacks, and well, it's going to be about there. Okay, overall quite happy with that. Now I can see that some details sort of recovered into those highlights. This looks a little bit tidier. So next thing I'll do is just pop on the profile correction and remove any chromatic aberration. There we go, that's done. And we'll do some sharpening. So again, holding the Alt or Option key down, slide the masking up. So we're just gonna minimize right down, so you can see how much noise is in this image, because the sharpening wants to apply to all the noise there. So I'm gonna reduce the mask right down like so, and the sharpening can stay around about 40, I think. I don't want to introduce too much else in the way of noise. Right, okay, so I've done the main of my edits, although just looking at the white now, it's looking a little bit bluish there, so I'm going to increase the temperature slightly, just until I get a slightly more pure white, and that looks pretty good. Okay, right, okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually just completely get rid of this noise, and this looks really heavy-handed, but we're going to go to the luminance slider on the noise reduction, and we're going to drag it right the way up. Let's bring it up to about 80, and we should see it's processing away. Right, so you'll see now we've got quite a smooth background. That's actually pretty nice, but what we've done is we've completely softened out the little birdie, so we don't want that. So what we're going to do in order to bring the bird back in is we're going to use an adjustment brush, and we're going to select the effect here and take that down to noise. Now by default, if you look at the noise slider, it's reduced it down to -100. So effectively what this is going to do is it's going to remove the luminosity that we've just changed in noise reduction. It's just going to remove that whole effect. So what we need to do now is paint that onto the bird. To make life easier, I'm going to use this option down here, which is show selected mask overlay, which means it will just sort of show up in red wherever I've painted on the bird. I'm going to reduce my brush down for starters, and I can increase the flow and reduce the feather slightly. I'm not going to use auto mask because it's pretty easy to sort of paint in here. We don't have to be super accurate, and also it uses up a lot more computer resources. It's trying to sort of work out the edges. So if I start to paint now, hopefully in a second it will catch up. There we go, we're starting to get the red in. And I'm being quite heavy-handed with a big brush because I'm lazy. There we go. And now I'm going to reduce the brush size down and just paint into the edges. If I go over a bit, there's the erase tool, which I'll show you in a moment. So just colour in there. And you can see by having that red mask overlay, it just makes it a little bit easier to make sure you're getting in on your subject matter and not everything else. Now what I also want to do is just reduce the brush down really small, and I'm just gonna bring this in. Doesn't have to be super accurate, but just painting on the leg or legs and the feet like so. And just do that. And as much as I hate to quote other people who do these videos, you can obviously take a lot more time over doing this because this is just an example. I really hate myself for saying that. Right, that'll do. Oh, I've gone over. So let's just show you the erase. So over here we've got the erase tool. So where I just went over there, so it's not the end of the world. We'll just nip that out. Right, turn off the overlay. And we can see now that the birds come back to being really quite sharp. While we've got this selection, so this is obviously just selecting on the bird, we can have a little look and a play with the clarity sliders, which can often help make things pop a little bit. Slight bit of the dehaze as well. Very, very subtle adjustments though. Anything too much looks just sort of over-processed really. And I think we'll apply done on that. So now we have soft background. This is got as much detail as it needs, and we've got a pretty sharp bird. And if we go back in 1:1, you can see the noise is there, but because there's so much texture and detail in the bird itself, it's sort of kind of lost, and the overall effect is strong. If you do see too much noise in any particular area, select the brush again, and you'll see the little blob appears. Click on there, and then we're now selecting that masking. And so if I press O, you should see it will go red. There we go. So there's the selection we had before, and you can see how rough it is now. So I'll turn off the mask, and what I can do is I can actually just increase this noise slider. So what that'll do is it'll just subtly bring back some of that noise reduction. So I think we can afford to bring some of that in there like that, and that's just reduced the noise a little bit further. Other little edits that I like to do just to ensure that my subject is the main focus is to reduce the highlights everywhere else. I know we've done an overall general edit, but if we select the adjustment brush and we go to highlights, what we can then do is just basically look to sort of brush over areas like this, and you really don't have to be super precise with it. Just waiting for the computer to catch up. There we go, and that will just, hopefully this will show up on the video. It's quite a subtle adjustment, but it's just gets rid of any distractions. Let's give that a little go over. Okay, right, so that's that. And just apply that with done. What else could we do to this? I'd be tempted actually to do a crop on this like so, and I'm going to just bring that in a little bit tighter so I can put the eye onto the third intersection there. And we've got a fairly tidy photo there. The other trick that you can do is to use, I can't think what it's called, radial mask. That's it, a radial filter. And I would do an exposure on this, and then just pick in the bird and produce an oval just to bring the bird in, and we can move that around. Now this is obviously really over the top, so what we're going to do is just bring the exposure slider back up like so, and then what we're doing there is basically dropping the background out. This is probably a little bit exaggerated, but it's just to bring the focus more into the bird. And there we go, that's how we do it.